Hey everybody, Shale here from the Radical Workplace. Always here with my treasured and trusted cohort, Mary Ellen Duncan. Hey Mel.
Hi everyone. How's it going?
Great. It's going great. It's a little warm here in the Greater Toronto area today.
Yes, it is.
So I'm staying inside with the AC, but that's really neither here or there. I'm totally psyched about
Episode.
today's episode because Jordan Rodney is here with us today from MaxPeople Perform, which is
Yes.
a managed HR company that works with small and medium-sized businesses to maximize and create efficiencies within their people's HR. And we have been working with them for a very long time. They have done wonders for us. Yeah, they've done wonders for us.
And also the founder of Rodney Employment Law. Let's not forget that.
That's right. And those two companies are merged together. And they work very, very synchronistically because obviously it makes sense that you're supported by the legislation as well as HR. And you would think that would happen more in their industry, but really these guys offer a very unique product, and that's why it was great to talk to him about that, and to talk to him about certainly about some of the stuff with COVID that's coming up in HR and the stuff that we have to be aware of. Very, very educational. So join us for this episode of The Radical Workplace with Jordan Rodney from MaxPeople Perform. I am here today with Jordan Rodney from Rodney Employment Law and president of MaxPeople Perform, which is an outsourced HR company that works with clients of various sizes in the GTA. Full disclosure, Pace Technical is one of the clients, and actually MaxPeople is a client of Pace Technical. So we've known each other for a very long time. Jordan and I go back personally for many, many, many years, probably too many for both of us to prefer counting. But that being said, I'm thrilled to have you join us here today, Jordan. Thanks, man.
I'm glad to be here. And yes, we've known each other a long time, but I have to say that you were in the cool crowd in high school. I was in the semi-cool crowd, but I knew you back in high school many over 30 years ago.
Yeah. Well, yeah. High school was 35 years ago for me, but who's counting? But anyway, it is what it is. But whatever, fate certainly brought us together at a time that we both needed each other's services, and certainly MaxPeople has made a massive difference to the way that Pace has grown into itself as far as culture and engagement goes, for sure. You guys have really led us in the right direction and constantly have given us the right advice and aimed us properly to be able to get to the success that we've achieved in that area so far. So let me take the opportunity firstly to thank you for that.
Okay, well, I know you guys have won all kinds of accolades in terms of best place to work, best culture, and you've always made a point of saying that MaxPeople had a small part in that, and that's why I'm in this business. That's why I chose to go into HR and employment law, which is for that reason, to help build cultures and to help people develop. And that's really why I'm doing what I'm doing today. So it gives me great pride.
And you do it very, very well. So again, we could put aside all the mutual kudos to each other and get started. So the Radical Workplace, as everybody knows, is this forum that we can have organic and casual chats about the unique approach that a lot of people may take to their business, and stepping outside the box and taking a radical idea and making it a reality and running with it. And certainly you come from a really interesting background. When people, you are essentially a labor lawyer. That's how you've been trained, and have been obviously that for a very long time, and worked in the corporate world as well as in the private sector. Which is, that kind of well-rounded experience is amazing. But the radical part of this that I was interested in is that although there's a ton of kind of employment lawyers and employment litigators out there, there is not a whole lot of them that are so closely associated with an actual human resources organization. You know, in my experience, you hire a labor lawyer, and they will address it specifically, the specific task, the specific case, all of those things. Where you have a really unique and radical approach to this is that your focus is kind of, and you can certainly correct me on this, is the legislative act, the legislative part of this is even secondary to meeting the demands of the human resources part of this. So maybe you can take us back to the beginning. And is this something that you had in your mind right from the beginning when you became a lawyer? Is that you wanted to actually work within HR rather than just the legal aspect of labor, or is this something that came as you started?
Yeah, it's a great question. And what happened, Shale, is from when I was about 15, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I knew that was my path. My parents didn't push me. It was something I just felt connected in many different ways. But once I finished articling, I articled at a personal injury and employment firm, and I was in court all the time, doing motions, doing, statement of claims, statement of defenses. I realized after that year, as great as a traditional career in law might be, it didn't leverage my strengths. It didn't speak to me in terms of my personality. And I knew, and I'm really proud of this because we're going back now to about 1995, so about 26 years ago. And I knew at that time that I needed to kind of combine my legal training and experience, which wasn't much at the time, with people. And I sourced out, the human resource programs at the time and ended up going back and doing my master's in human resources. And that summer, and this is a really interesting story, that summer, I was sitting in the Labatt's Brewery office on the one that used to be near the airport in Toronto, now closed. I was sitting with the VP of Labor Relations, who did the same program that I did at Queen's. And I told him, I'm really interested in getting into human resources, labor relations. It was one phone call to the head of the beer store. And the next thing I knew, I was involved. I was shadowing one of my mentors for the whole summer at the beer store. Still one of the best jobs I've ever had. And I knew it spoke to me. I knew that this was the career I needed to go into, which was kind of combining legal, which would be a huge advantage as an HR person, with human resources, which is, because I love people so much, I knew I had to do that in my career. And yeah, so that's kind of what led me there, and I haven't looked back.
So you basically stumbled upon it. It was your experience that actually brought you to the realization. It wasn't something that you kind of said initially, I'm going to be in HR. You said initially, I'm going to be a lawyer, and then HR was something that kind of popped up while you were doing it.
I couldn't see myself at the time doing the traditional legal career for the next 30, 35 years. I just couldn't see it. And I'm glad that I had the vision and foresight at the time, because that's not always the case. That doesn't always happen. People often, they do their careers, they get paid a lot of money. I was paid pretty well as an articling student, even back then. But for me, it's always been about, trying to do what you love and being passionate about it. And that's what led me in that direction.
Those are definitely the key words that we hear almost in every episode. Isn't that right, Mel? Yeah. Yep. That as soon as you're talking to people who have like a radical approach, it always comes back to passion, and it always comes back to enthusiasm. Because, certainly you can probably speak to this as well, but on my own, my own look at this is that if the passion isn't there, nothing is there. Because really you're just kind of walking the steps. You know what I mean? Or you're going around in circles. Yeah. Like you said, you couldn't see yourself being in that position of just whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with being a lawyer, but certainly, this unique approach that you had to say, I want to be, use the law to enhance my HR career, which is basically what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, you explained it actually really well, but how I wanted to do something different. That's what I wanted. I wanted to do something different. And how I like to think of it is we're lawyers that understand the HR side of businesses, and we're HR people that have the legal foundation. So, that's what we bring. And that's what makes us different. And that's what makes us unique. And looking back, I have a boutique employment law firm, and that we're growing. And I've been always able to leverage the legal, but it's been in the way that I've wanted to do it. And which is kind of integrating both businesses together. And it's been very fulfilling.
Well, it makes sense. It certainly makes sense from a like a small business owner who engages you on a regular basis to have not only full HR, a suite of HR products that we use all the time, but also rather than have to reach outside of our organization to get the legal information we need as we are dealing with live action cases or situations within our own organization, we can actually just do that through our outsourced HR company, and that's massively convenient. So let's just drive backwards for a second. So you started out practicing in corporate law, is that correct? You were
personal injury and employment.
Personal injury and employment. Okay.
Gotcha.
And did you do specific? Were you working at specific law firms, or were you freelancing it? Like, how did you approach it?
No, I articled at a firm. It was a small personal injury employment firm in Toronto, and then worked there for about 6 months after articling, so about a year and a half, and then I went into a career. Then I went in-house after my master's and basically did HR labor relations roles in-house in corporations for the first half of my career. And that also really helped me because I was able to kind of see how organizations function. And so I went from a law firm to the corporate world and then to consulting. So that's kind of been the journey that I've taken.
Obviously that is an organic, certainly an organic path to where you wanted to be. But somewhere along the lines that changed. Somewhere along the lines you decided that, okay, I really have to start kicking in my, this part of the corporate world isn't fulfilling my HR desires. Is that right? Like, are you focusing too much on legal at that point for your comfort, or are you looking for something more?
I sat shale when I left the corporate world in early 2008 to join MaxPeople. I was sitting with my VP and my business coach that the company was graciously paid for, and I resigned. And I advised them of my resignation. And they said to me, "Why are you resigning?" And I didn't miss a beat. I said, "I haven't been able to achieve my full potential in the corporate world. And I knew that I can do it as an entrepreneur." And it was scary as hell. I had 2 young kids at the time. My wife had just started the business, and I was her first and probably, as she would say, her best hire. I don't know if that's true. But,
certain things she has to say, but anyway, go on.
And she said, "You're going to make it. You're going to come. You're going to try to grow the HR practice, grow the employment law side, and see how it goes." But it was a very risky endeavor. And I just want to share a quick story, because thinking about this podcast, I thought about this yesterday, and it was, to me, so inspiring at the time. When I left the corporate world, I had a great job. I was happy, maybe not fully happy, but I was generally happy. And I sent an email out to my network saying, I'm joining this consulting firm, and, spreading the word and trying to get it out to as many people as possible. This is pre-social media and all that stuff. And I got a lot of emails back, but I got an email back from one of my VPs who said to me, "Congratulations, and you did this 1 year early." This was in 2008. So I called her up right away. I'm like, "What did you mean, like 1 year early?" And in 1999, when I interviewed with this national courier company, ICS Courier, I guess they asked me a question in the interview: "What do you want to be doing in 10 years? And I said, "I want to be running my own HR consulting and employment law firm." And she said, "And you did it 1 year early." So she reminded me of that. And I thought, wow, like, that's all the confidence I needed to know, like, this was absolutely the right decision, because I was following my path.
Right.
Yeah.
And following the path is not always, and first of all, it's a great story. As an entrepreneur and as a fellow entrepreneur, I can certainly totally associate and relate to the risk, which is, unbelievable when you're thinking about it. When we started, when my partner, Mike, and I started Pace, Mike was just about to have his first kid, and I had two small kids, and we're about to jump off this cliff. And that's exactly how it feels.
Yeah.
No matter how much confidence you have, you're jumping off a cliff. And so for, like looking back at what you did, so you went from you left your, the corporate world, let's say, just for, just for the sake of us having to have something to call it, you left the corporate world and went into a partnership with your wife. Tell us a little bit about Julie, so we get a kind of a bit of background on how this happened.
And I left Maple Leaf Foods, which was 25,000 people globally.
Right.
I was involved with cross-functional teams, Six Sigma, operations, finance.
Wow.
To work with Julie. Julie she's my wife and my business partner. And yeah, she's extraordinary. I mean, she is probably the most capable and competent person I know in terms of taking stuff on. But she also, drives me a bit nuts, because my day starts really, really early. And at some point my day kind of winds down. Hers just ramps up. It starts early and it just ramps up till bedtime. So an incredible amount of stamina. But you know what? Life's short, Shale, and I wanted to give it a go. I wanted to do it. At the time I was 36 years old, and I wanted to give it a go and see if we can make it work. And we had a vision from the very beginning. We had a vision of the type of organization that we wanted to create, which was we wanted to create and I know this sounds cliche. It's not cliche from how I'm saying it. We wanted to create a family type atmosphere. We wanted to create an environment where we recognize, people with young families. We wanted to focus first on our employees, which would then translate to clients. And we obviously want to have, exceptional and fanatical client service, but we also wanted to hire the very best employees. And that's something we set out from the very, very beginning. So.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously you've proven yourself in that place. You guys have always had, certainly from our experience, top-notch people within the organization. But certainly getting into, I've worked with my wife in the past, and she's off on a different in a different direction now. We had no issues working together whatsoever, but it's different than what you have been dealing with, right? Like my wife was our manager of administration. She had years and years of experience doing this, but she worked and reported directly to me. And it's a different relationship than you and Julie have, in that, first of all, you're business partners, and you're in two different kind of sets, different kind of blurry edges, of course, but different kind of parts of the organization. When you jumped into this, was there a kind of re-looking at the relationship on a business level? Because you've got to I found anyway, that you had to find your legs, because you've dealt with your wife for 20 years in one way. And now suddenly you have to kind of interact with her on a completely different level. How was that for you? What was that like?
Yeah, I think, there's two things I can say for certainty as an entrepreneur. Well, three things. One, I'm never happy. I might be satisfied, but I'm never fulfilled. And I'm always there's always that self-doubt as an entrepreneur, which I think all entrepreneurs,
it's inherent. Yeah, it's inherent.
Everybody has that.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure your other guests have said that as well. The other thing is, entrepreneurship, Shale, for me is like, and I am going to answer your question, but it's kind of like going up an escalator that's going down.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like being an entrepreneur is like. Everyone can be a consultant, but to be an entrepreneur, to bring in business, to build your business, to grow your business, it's hard. Otherwise, everyone would be doing it. Which brings me to the third point, which is you asked about Julie. So very early on, we one of the things which I would suggest as an entrepreneur as well is, if you're not really great at something, or if you don't really know how to do something, make sure you hire and surround yourself with great people who can, whether they're advisors, therapists, business coaches. And from day one, we had business coaches, a different variety of business coaches. And I know, Shell, that's something that you've been very big on. And one of the first things we did, if you can believe it, is we actually wrote ground rules of working as a husband and wife. Like, and I could probably find them somewhere, but it's, we couldn't talk about business after a certain time. We had, it was like kind of like the rules of engagement of working together.
Right. And boundaries.
Boundaries.
Yeah, setting boundaries. Great. Yeah.
because, and look, I'm not going to lie. There's times at 11:30 at night and I'm a poor sleeper altogether. And Julie will bring up a work issue. And I'm like, man, like I can't sleep already. Now you're bringing this up
right now,
right before bed. But
Right.
we've been pretty good, but honestly, I don't think we could have done it without our advisors and coaches and who've really helped us. Because the whole thing is, Shale, early on, I might have taken liberties and she might have taken liberties because of our marriage. So maybe how we spoke to each other in front of other staff, or how we dealt with the client issue, how we reacted. But what's happened is we've learned to kind of really harness that and manage that as we've gone a little further in our business. So I think we have a really good setup, and I think it's a strength for our business.
I'm Michael Shagru, president of Pace Technical. For over 20 years, we've been the leader in managed and co-managed IT for businesses in the GTA. If you want a proactive, process-driven approach to IT, we can help. Our complete care service eliminates issues and gets businesses the most out of their IT investments. We provide help desk support for quick response when you have issues, proactive maintenance to keep systems running, enterprise-grade security to keep you safe, and IT strategy for better business decisions. Book a free 20-minute IT gauge at pacetechnical.com today.
That definitely answers the question as far as was there a period of time that it took you to kind of adjust into that role? I would imagine there probably would have been, because it definitely worked out. But, like in that relationship, was there an adjustment that needed to be made? Did you ever have to address it in a way that it's like, all right, hey, this is growing, this is doing really well. Maybe we need to kind of, but I'm kind of feeling uncomfortable about this part of it. Did that ever happen, or did you guys just kind of organically get the stuff happening?
Yeah, no, there was many challenges, and there's still challenges. We have our date night, we go out.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like we have to it's kind of like when you see people during in the COVID times, it's like, what's there to talk about? We talk about COVID. I go out with Julie on date night. What do you end up talking about? Work. So we kind of said, like, let's talk about something else. We kind of made this rule in recent years, like, let's talk about the kids. Let's talk about
but that's the other thing. It's either you're talking about work or you're talking about the kids. That's the way the way it works, right? Goodness. So that helps it grow. And I had the great opportunity to watch you guys, because we got involved with you guys with MaxPeople. I'm going to say 10 years ago. It was probably 2010, 2011. That we got involved with you, and you had just really started to get your feet wet in not even in let's face it, MaxPeople Perform does exactly what Pace does, except they just do it for HR, right? So you're a managed service company, and you hadn't really got yourself to that place yet where you were confident in managed services. You were still kind of billing traditionally, by a certain block of hours, which everybody was doing, right? And so what was the impetus for you to look at, the environment and say, you know what, we can do this better if we turn this into a predictable monthly revenue and kind of include this massive all-in service that will achieve the proper end result for people. And that includes not just the HR perspective of this and the related HR people and situations such as hiring and firing, terminations, employment manuals, compliance, all of these things that HR covers, as well as when things go south, you have a lawyer to turn to. And that's all included in one thing. When did you guys decide that you wanted to head into a managed service direction as opposed to kind of doing status quo? When did it become a radical change is what I'm asking.
I think that was always the goal, but I don't think we knew early on in the early years exactly how to get there. So, it was through business coaches, through business groups. We're both part of long-term members of business groups, like business forum groups where we share ideas. And, Shale, I give you and Mike credit, because we had a dinner at the Keg. It must have been, 10 years ago. And I was two entrepreneurs. You guys were a few years ahead of us chatting. And one of the things you told me at the time was about the unlimited support. And we're still doing that today. So I thank you for that, because my team has pushed over the years, oh, we can't give unlimited support. But the thing is, when you're selling a subscription model, when you're selling a recurring revenue model, as long as you clarify to clients what's in and outside of the scope, then everything's included. And then you can exclude, certain items, like in our case, recruitment, legal services, leadership assessments, but everything else for our plus package clients, it's included. And I got to tell you, our business would not be where it is today without the subscription model and the unlimited support.
Yeah, and listen, I appreciate you saying that, and I definitely remember that dinner. And I find it hilarious because we are in completely different industries, and the same kind of stuff came up. People could not, and that includes you, and really included me years ago as well. The standard, you've grown up and been taught a certain way as a lawyer. You've grown up and been taught a certain way as a technician who runs an IT company. Right. Is that I do work and I bill for that work. And so my time is worth this much an hour. And it was when we were starting out in managed services, it was so difficult for people to get their heads wrapped around this. There were, we talked to people who were trying to do similar things. They're like, what are you talking about? You can't throw in unlimited hours. People are going to take advantage of you.
Right.
And, our argument was always, they're not going to take advantage of you if two things happen. The first thing is you give real thought to what you're including.
Right.
And you hire specifically to that, and you define the edges. And number two, and probably even more important, is that you communicate that well to the client base, and you set the expectation and you become proactive. So once you start doing this, for instance, once MaxPeople kind of got their heads wrapped around that stuff and started going more into managed services, we saw almost immediate change in the way that you dealt with proactivity within our organization. Suddenly, it wasn't just about us saying, oh, guys, we've got this issue, we need you to deal with it. Suddenly, we had a roadmap from MaxPeople that would be followed to the T to get us where we needed to be.
Right.
So that the reactive noise that was coming from us went down completely.
Yeah.
And it just became this proactive thing. And so, you were just like we do, we work extraordinarily hard to keep and maintain our clients running at a very high level. And that enables us to be able to collect that money on a monthly basis and keep it very predictable as far as cost goes for us, and very predictable as far as cost goes for our clients. And yes, and that is exactly where you guys have landed. And again, I think that's it just makes more sense, the unlimited part of this. And I remember the conversation that we had with you about unlimited, and you did have a hard time getting your head wrapped around that. I think most people do. But if it's done right, just like you did it, it becomes less of a liability and much more of an asset.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things in the last couple of years on the legal side, because lawyers are like accountants, right? Even more so, it's kind of like you don't call your lawyer or you don't call your accountant because you're afraid of being billed. So what we've started to do on the legal side is a variation of it to sell kind of a monthly subscription on the legal side, which is a little bit tougher to sell than the traditional model, but we're doing it. And also flat fees. So basically saying to a client at the outset, this is what this project, it's like a mini project. This is what it's going to cost. So there's peace of mind for the client. They don't have to worry that they're going to be, I never want a client, Shale, and I've never wanted a client to be afraid to not call because they're afraid they're going to be charged. It's always like, if a client, I want to be there as an advisor. I want our team to be there as an advisor for a client when they need us. And I would never, ever want a client to think they can't call because they're afraid of being charged.
Right.
So these alternative fee models, it benefits all parties involved. And it gives everyone peace of mind. And
it does. And it just takes people a while to get used to it. I think that's changed. Software subscriptions have changed the way that people look at how they do business almost completely, right? It was different when you were buying, every time you needed a new user and you were buying a copy of Microsoft Office for that person. Now it's a subscription. Now you're always getting the latest version. You're always getting the most up-to-date, not just the latest software, but also the latest updates to that software. And you're just used to paying for that on a monthly basis, and it becomes an operating cost rather than a capital expense. So it actually sits way better in people's profit and loss than, saying, okay, we have to undergo this huge overhaul of our HR and write a brand new employment standards guide and employee handbook, and that's going to cost us $25,000.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now it's part of what you do, and it is it just makes it way easier as a business owner to deal with that on the cost basis. So let's talk about, so you've been working in this, you've built this company as an entrepreneur based on, again, this unique vision of combining employment law and employment compliance and standards through HR. And like I said, it's a very unique kind of, I don't really know of anybody else in our area that's doing something similar yet. But what that has done now, and you can certainly, I want you to speak to this. Let's talk about COVID and how that's affected HR and how that has affected the way that you have had to adjust what you have done. We know that you had to snap into action immediately, the same way that we did. We had to really be agile in what we were trying to let our communicate to our clients, and ensure that they had an idea of what path they needed to take. You guys put us on that path as well and said, okay, let's do it this way. What we're dealing with now is the fact that we've got employees out there that are, and it's not just me, it's everybody, that we have employees out there that for whatever reason do not want to get vaccinated.
Right.
And it brings up some challenges within our organization about bringing people back into in-house. It brings up some challenges about whether we can go out to clients in the same way with these people. And, it's starting to create a bit of a separation. And, what's your advice to small business owners like me, and how we can address this empathetically, but also considering the best interest of the organization, as well as the best interest of the employees within the organization?
Yeah, it's I'm not surprised that you asked me this question, because you're probably the fifth person today that's asked me about
exactly I would assume
unvaccinated employees. But I just want to mention a comment about COVID, because what I said is what I said to clients is the way you act during COVID is gonna have a long-term impact on the success of your organization. So how you conduct yourself, I'm talking about like a year ago when this first happened, when it was like, when we didn't have the information we have now. And, I actually never felt shale and mountain, the 14 years that I've been in this business, 13 years, that I think our clients needed us more in the COVID period than ever before. And we were happy to be there. And we had an incredible retention rate for our clients during COVID, because I really think that, just like many companies were lost. They didn't really know. This was like uncharted, I'm not going to say unprecedented, but uncharted territory. Like, how do you deal with this? How do you deal with all these scenarios? And thinking back, it's actually remarkable how some companies did really well in terms of, I'm talking about the COVID response. And some companies took a very hard line, and it's going to hurt them. It hurt them in the short term, and it's going to hurt them in the long term too.
I agree.
So, I hope that some of the listeners on this podcast, took that to heart, because I think it's going to help with the viability of their business long term. As far as the question about vaccinations, I mean, it's definitely the hottest topic right now. Even our lovely Prime Minister is grappling with this issue of, passports and things like that. I mean, here's what I would say about vaccinations. I believe that from a legal perspective, until there's case law or legislation, you can, as a business owner, not only should you be asking your staff if they're vaccinated or going to be, it would be irresponsible for you not to ask that question. And I wouldn't ask it in a team meeting. I wouldn't ask it on a Zoom call, but through a survey or through a a brief questionnaire to find out. Now, if someone elects not to answer the question, which is within their rights, their privacy rights, then I think it's also fair for an employer to inquire, why are you not willing to answer the question? This is a health and safety reason. We're trying to figure out if you're going to be vaccinated or if you are vaccinated, and to really ask that question. If they still persist on not answering it, which again is their right, then, you know, what I'm telling clients, Shell and Mel, because I'm getting a lot of calls from clients on this issue, is depending on the industry you're in, depending on the work that you're doing, the size and all other factors, there may be activities that those unvaccinated individuals are precluded from doing. So, you know, I'll give you an example, a manufacturing plant. Let's say it has a day, afternoon, and night shift. And on the day shift, there's 50 staff, the afternoon has 20 staff, and the night shift has 5. And this is just a hypothetical example.
Yeah.
If an unvaccinated person was working on the day shift and they had this deeply held belief of not getting vaccinated, and the company tried to encourage them and they just said, I'm not doing it, then I don't think there's any problem talking as an option of moving them to a different shift where you're promoting health and safety, where you're protecting your other staff, and you're still accommodating that individual, because accommodation, it involves a reasonable, not a perfect solution. So it's not like, okay, you can work from home forever, because maybe you're in a business where the person can't work from home and can't work remotely. Yeah. So you have to explore all options, and you have to be as creative as possible. And yes, it's a bit of a hassle for entrepreneurs and business owners, but that's what you need to do. That's what you need to do. And I suspect that something's going to happen either through case law or legislation that's going to change this. But I think as employers, you have to be proactive, very proactive in this.
But what do you think is going, so, you know, going back to, and obviously that is very sound advice. And, you know, and you and I definitely have had conversations very much like this in the past a little while, to kind of, so that we could keep our bearing straight on what we were trying to do here. Do you find, you brought up that Prime Minister Trudeau has, I mean, actually just this morning it was on CBC, that they have said that within the next couple of months, they will have a passport that that says that they will have a vaccination report on the passport, which I personally think is great, and I have no issue with it. I think that it's a responsible thing to do. Do you think, you've indicated that this is a work in progress, that this is morphing. This is something that the lawyers at the highest and judges at the highest court are likely going to be dealing with, because there are going to be lobby groups out there for privacy and all those things that are going to go, no, we can't do this. So where do you draw the line between health and safety and privacy? Because that's what you're dealing with right now.
Yeah, I think, Shell, I think a vaccination passport doesn't mean, it might be like to go to a movie or to go to a concert. It doesn't mean that if you're unvaccinated and you don't have a passport, you can't go to the movie or concert. What it means is you might have other measures that you might have to undertake before you can go to that concert, or before you can go to that Blue Jay game, like rapid testing or antigen testing or something of that nature. So it's actually treating that group of unvaccinated individuals differently. I don't believe in Canada, I may be wrong, I don't believe it's going to go as far as, okay, you can't attend, you're not vaccinated, you can't come and work out in this club, or you're unvaccinated, you can't work in our company, we're going to fire you. I don't think that's where it's going. I think it's that those individuals, that group is going to have additional measures placed upon them by virtue of introducing a passport.
Okay, but you're saying that you're not going to be refused to get into concerts or get on a plane for not being vaccinated. I would say that, isn't that part of what's happening right now? Like, just for unvaccinated people to travel, they do definitely have additional things they have to do. Right. I guess you're right, now that I'm thinking about it, that there hasn't really been a thing that says you're not able to do this. Although, there was entertainment venues in New York, Springsteen on Broadway was one of them.
Right.
Stephen Colbert show was one of them.
Yeah.
That said, if you aren't double vaccinated by vaccinations that are USDA approved,
Right.
then you cannot get in.
Right.
So those things did happen in the States.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
other places in the world too. Like it's not just the States, but like there are other countries. Like I heard of a story in Trinidad. This guy's mom's died and he couldn't go there just because he had 2 different vaccines. So
yeah, so the standards, that's a good point, Mel. The standards of each country are different too. Like eventually, as far as the Springsteen and Colbert thing goes, they changed those rules. They instead of being USDA approved, they said it had to be WHO approved. So now they made it a little more global. Right. So but there were a lot of Canadians who wouldn't have been able to fly into New York with their tourist dollars and see those shows.
Right. Yeah.
So where do you think that, I know that you're saying, and I certainly, with your experience, I trust where you're saying this is going. You don't think that it's going to get that drastic in Canada?
I don't know, but what I think, Shell, the issue is, and let me talk about it from this perspective, because I think it's less about, let's talk about the workplace for a second, because this is the radical workplace. So if you're an individual, you as a business owner can have your own rules about your company in terms of vaccinated, unvaccinated. It's a private business. You can do that. I think the bigger challenge is the call I got yesterday from an accounting firm. They have people that go to clients to do audits, and those clients are expecting these accountants to start coming on site to their clients. These clients are saying, I don't want anyone on site, and they have to do it on site. They can't do it remotely. These clients are saying, I don't want anyone to be here unless they're vaccinated. Right. So that puts a tremendous amount of pressure on an accounting firm in this case, on what do you do with these staff? Like, do you move them around? Do you put other people on the account? I think that's the bigger challenge that companies are going to face than, if you can go to a sporting event. Because I think there's going to be ways around it, but it's the workplace situations that are going to get really tricky.
Yeah. And I get that. I mean, again, using it from our perspective, like you're saying that because I'm an employer, I get to call the shots about who I want to have working and make the rules about that. But now you're in a gray area, because I could also say, if that is indeed true, I don't want anyone from Grenada working for me. And, the only reason I choose that is because that's where Mel is from. Yeah. And, that is maybe I just had a bad experience with it, and I made that rule. This is my company. Yeah. I started the company with Mike. We both agree that we don't want people from Grenada working in the company. Yeah. So what is the difference between, what's the difference between those two things?
So let me clarify. So, preventing someone from working at a business based on where they're from would be a violation of the human rights.
Okay, that's what I was waiting for.
That's a direct violation. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Now, arguably, if someone has a deeply held religious belief on vaccinations, that's something that they can claim under human rights. And again, Shell, I don't write the legislation. The legislation's there. Yeah. I didn't make. So there's the religious exemption for vaccinations, and that's where businesses are going to have to be creative and try to accommodate. But I think that's different from, not employing someone from a certain country. There's a distinction there.
I know. And I was being facetious about it because there was there's obviously that is absolutely not allowed to happen. But I guess my point is that we're still in a place where we don't know where this is going to fall. You've got let's use your own example, as far as someone's got deeply held religious beliefs about vaccine, you're dealing with Jehovah's Witnesses, who definitely have deeply held beliefs about vaccines. And if I'm at the cusp of hiring someone who, because of his deeply held religious beliefs about not getting vaccines, has exposed my staff and my clients to health and safety risks, am I at liberty to say, I can't hire you because you will not get vaccinated? Is that something that I can do?
Well, this is like a final Jeopardy question.
I'm putting it out there because it's going to become something that you deal with. Yeah. Because it's already out there.
So what I can tell you, what I can tell the listeners is, as of now, there's a fairly significant difference between making vaccination status a condition of hire versus once the person's already working there. So there's a little bit of a different threshold from a legal perspective. So if you've hired the person and they're working there and they choose to be unvaccinated, I think you have a little bit more liberties to take as an employer than you do about interviewing someone, offering them the job, and then them saying, as they're signing their employment agreement, by the way, I'm not vaccinated, and you rescinding the offer. I think that would be much more challenging for employers than if the person's already working there and you're having to accommodate them once they've started. I don't know if that makes logical sense to you, but I think the threshold is a little different.
I think, well, this is where you're going to start to get, and the reason I was pushing on this is because we're starting to see this kind of separation in society right now. Right. You're starting to see vaccinated versus unvaccinated. Yeah. You're starting to see the standards change. And I think it's become extraordinarily valid as we've been moving forward in this. So you hit it on the head. Like it's still a moving target, let's be honest. And that is this is what makes it so important, and we're out of time now, but I definitely want to say, the reason this is so important and these discussions are so important and people like you and your organization are so important. And I think it gets what's the word I'm looking for? That it doesn't get recognized or enough importance put on it. I'm out there all the time in peer groups and doing speaking engagements and talking to people who have, who are 4, 5, 6 to $10 million companies that don't have an HR outlet. They've got, if they have one person, they've got a consultant, or it's their office manager. Our office manager takes care of all that stuff.
Right.
Do they really take care of all your HR stuff when you've got 35 employees? I doubt it highly, because I'll tell you this, I came to you guys when I had 15 or 16 employees and I was at my wit's end of trying to kind of juggle running a company and doing all the people things that needed to be done. I still think that this is what you're offering is still so early in its kind of understanding out there of why it's important that, certainly people listening to this need to get their heads wrapped around that. HR and good HR representation is critical as we move forward in clients and employee engagement to get the right resource behind you. You really, if you don't have the right HR resource and you're growing, you're going to not grow. I guarantee you're not going to grow as quickly. And I guarantee you it's going to be a far bumpier ride. And I'm just saying this from my own perspective. So again, George, always a pleasure talking to you. We always get into great conversations and I was really looking forward to this because of it, but thanks for bringing your game here. And you've really, I'm sure you've enlightened a lot of people today about their own approach to HR. I think you're going to have a lot of entrepreneurs out there giving themselves a gut check. So thanks
Definitely
for that.
A gut
That's
check.
important. That's important. All right. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you. All the best,
Jordan,
guys.
All the best.
Thank you.